Oh no.
There we go.
Okay.
Now we're live. Yep. Live and
Sounds
recording.
good.
All right.
All right,
How
Ben.
do-
What's the topic for today?
Well, maybe we should introduce ourselves and what the hell this is going to be about. Because I
Okay.
mean, the only thing we've done so far is the music on Wednesday, and that wasn't really we were just kind of figuring out
Yeah.
how all this shit works. In any case, if you're listening in right now, thank you for listening in. My name is Ben Clybor, and I am joined by,
Vincent Sergi.
and this is gonna be, well, ideally we just want to talk about whatever comes, whatever interests us, and we figured we have interesting enough conversations. We're not experts in any way, so bear that in mind.
I'm the expert. Ben isn't.
Oh,
but yeah.
Correction. Vinny's the expert. I'm just the fucking. I'm his foil. I'm the dope.
Yes.
here. Yeah.
There we go.
Correction. But in any case, we're just gonna be the idea for this radio segment, or I don't know. Can we call this a podcast?
I mean, I guess so because we're actually recording it.
I guess. Yeah. The idea for this podcast, just kind of whatever interests us. And if you find it interesting, please continue to listen. What else did I want to say? Man, 5 seconds in, and I'm already running out of things to say. I guess I should talk about kind of what interests us exactly. We're going to be talking about. I think we're going to just start off with, really. I guess you could call it metaphysics at first.
Philosophical.
Philosophy.
Metaphysics.
Stuff like that. Maybe we'll probably get into some science, definitely, and math.
Science, math, politics, music.
History,
Just about anything.
Just about anything. Hopefully we can stop rambling and actually start talking about what it is that interests us pretty soon. I don't know. How do we want to lead this off? I was kind of debating how to do this because it's not exactly an easy thing to just jump into.
Oh, the
question of the day.
the daily topic.
The
Okay.
daily topic, yeah. I don't
Well-
know. When did this start? Because I remember at least I think it was the very beginning of last semester that we kind of that you Vinny, started harassing us with this topic.
Yeah. So
And I think just about everyone in our friend group eventually said, okay.
hated me. Yes.
Yes. Immediately
Abhorred me.
Yes. Immediately. Well, immediately started hating him. But then after a while, just finally said, okay, Vinny, cut it out. Or we're going to excommunicate you.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone
And then
put
I finally had to stop.
I don't
Yeah.
think anyone put it into words like that, but that was the general.
It was an
general
unwritten
sentiment.
contract.
It was it was a subconscious agreement between everyone else, and it's
that I would stop bringing the specific topic
yeah,
up.
and it's amazing because it's so simple, and it's nothing that would necessarily make one mad politically or maybe not even philosophically. This really is kind of pure metaphysics. But the question was, and the question for today is, does color exist?
That was how it started. Yes.
That was how
So this whole conversation
yeah.
started from, I think it was at lunch one day, and we were all sitting around.
Yeah.
And I don't know how this got into my head. I don't know what I was watching or something that this got into my head.
I think you were just trolling us.
Yes.
Weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So,
See, at first,
Yeah.
I was like, okay, let me just see if I can actually convince someone that color does not exist, because that was the position that I held. And I don't know, I thought I was doing a pretty decent job at first, and then I started to actually look into it, and I'm like, oh wait, maybe I am right. You know, maybe this has some kind of merit to it.
oh
how I'm
wait.
thinking.
So you weren't convinced of it
At
yourself
first, no.
before? Oh.
At first, no.
Wow. All right. So.
But But as I went on,
props to taking that on.
But as I
Yeah.
went on, I was like, maybe there is something to this. So, yeah, so the whole conversation started out as, does color exist? And then I eventually started to annoy everyone further by saying, like, there's no such thing as sound or touch
I think
or...
objects. What do you mean by that's a glass of water sitting on the table in
Yeah,
front of you?
Yeah.
What just stuff like that. So obviously it's taken quite a while for that to cool down, and for us to be able to talk about it again without drawing too much ire from our friends. I don't even think I haven't brought it up. It's only come up as a joke.
Yeah, no.
Like, it's really only come up as a.
It's a meme at this point.
It's a meme at
Yeah.
this point. It's a very internal meme. But yeah, it's such a simple question, and it can it doesn't have to be color as Vinny said. It can be.
Just about anything
Just about
you
anything.
want.
I mean, he extended it to sound, a cup of water sitting on the table, the leaves on the trees, the birds sitting on the branches, etc., so on and so forth. And I tried to write down as clearly as I could my objections to the proposal. So Vinny obviously came down on the no side. That is, he does not. He argued very strongly that color does not exist. But a lot of the, well, I think we can just get into it. A lot of the opposition to this idea that color, sound, touch, whatever, doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I think strikes most people as
Idiotic.
in as many words, idiotic. Well, just kind of a complete what's the word, negation of reality.
Yeah.
Just kind of saying, you don't know. It's more than saying what you see. You might see an optical illusion and say, okay, you can't believe your eyes, but we're just sitting in a studio and I can see the computer pretty clearly. The keyboard is black, the table is brown, the couch over there is gray.
So the whole thing is, what makes what you're seeing right now not an illusion, but something else is an illusion that you're also saying.
Yeah.
So what's the real difference, if there is one at all?
Yeah. So like, why can't I say that the color that I'm seeing on this keyboard right now is black, and that color black is real? Why is that so?
Yeah. Because like
so crazy?
So it's really interesting because whenever you have like something that a lot of people take for granted just as like true, just based on like, because it's something that we interact with on like a day-to-day basis, and like when you say like, oh wait, so this whole entire thing that you think is real, that you interact with on a daily basis, is actually not real. It's just an illusion, basically. It's just in your head. It's just a byproduct of the human brain, basically. So I mean it's such a simple question, but also raises like a lot of questions, which I thought was really interesting, and then so we'll start to get into. I think we should first dive into like how the whole conversation started, which was, does color exist, and then we can kind of like
branch out from
there to like whatever we want.
Okay, so I guess I kind of already said it. Just to as soon as you sat down at that lunch table that one day and said, "Hey guys, guess what? Color doesn't exist." I think everyone, maybe except one who kind of saw what you were doing.
Yeah.
I think we know who that is. I think everyone else basically said, "All right, Vinny, you're a fucking idiot. What are you talking about?"
Mm-hmm.
And are you texting right now?
No, I am looking for the picture that I took of the board when we were
drawing
out all these ideas.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay.
I have. Oh, I think I wrote most of it.
Okay.
Of it down. But if
all
you
right, so
want to.
I have the whole board right here, so I'm gonna keep this up.
All right,
so I have
cool.
that.
So I guess that would be the average person's reaction to being posed with a question like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no other proper response.
Like, you're really pulling the carpet out from under people's feet when you say something like that. Okay, so how do you proceed from there to actually convince them
Okay.
that color is not real?
So, let's see. So basically, the whole idea is that, I guess this is one of the main points that I would probably make, is that, so if you're trying to talk about something like color, right, and you want to say that it's an objective reality, because we have people who look at the sky and they say it's blue,
Sure.
okay,
Yeah.
and so we all take as fact that the sky is blue, okay? So is blue even like an actual thing? And so the whole argument basically rests upon the main argument that this sight, which, like, you're seeing color, so color is a sight, right? It's a part of your sight, and the whole idea here is that that sight requires an observer. So, like, sight requires a seer, sound requires a hearer, or else, like you don't have one without the other, because they're like intertwined in such a way that you cannot separate them. So the whole thing is so we need, so like every sight that an individual human being or anything has is unique to that thing, because
Sure.
because no human is exactly the same,
Yeah.
like down to like even like the subatomic level, whatever you want to talk about. So no human is exactly the same. So every sight, so like if I look at the sky and I say that's blue, well, what I'm seeing might be just a tad different than what you're seeing, even in the most minute
Well, sure.
change.
We're not exactly sharing the same spatial perspective,
Yeah,
right? We're not viewing the sky from the same point
yeah.
on the
But-
ground or wherever we might be.
But also, like, our eyes themselves are different, and they don't see the exact same image. Like, there could be slight differences in the hues, like just ever so slightly, even.
Well, yeah, I
Could,
mean,
like,
some
like
peop-
it's not going to be exactly the same for every human being.
Yeah, I mean, some
know what I mean?
people. I mean, obviously, there's colorblind people,
Yeah,
right?
and- and then
and there's
that.
fully blind people.
Oh,
who,
yeah.
You can't really even begin to describe what color is.
Which is another argument that
I mean,
you-
there's I forget exactly what this where this came from, but there is some evidence that some blind people are able to differentiate color by touch. I have no idea how much that is true. Maybe it's just a
I could see
urban
that.
legend. But
I could see that if they were not blind at one point in their lives, because if you were not blind at one point in
yeah.
in your life and then you became blind, I could see how that could work.
But anyways,
But-
but just
yeah.
restricting ourselves to people who can, who are people who claim they can see color, right?
Yeah.
Um,
So
I mean, most people would agree that the sky is blue. I mean, it's kind of a trope at this point that to say that someone believes in something ridiculous is there's a phrase that's like, oh, you're telling me that the sky is green,
yeah.
right, instead of blue. Some other color than what most people would agree the sky is.
But I mean, what if somebody looks at the sky and they think it's green? Is that wrong for them to say that? Like is it even possible to prove that true or false in any way? I don't think so. I don't think that's even possible. So like, and
what, to tell someone that when they look at the sky and say it's green that they're wrong?
yeah, you can't, because maybe they do see it as green, and the only way to know is if you were that person, but you can never be that person.
Sure, but
That's the so basically the argument comes down to, hold on, I'm fixing my mic, sorry. The whole argument comes down to is that every human being has a subjective interpretation of what color is and what sight is, and so basically different people see different colors and different hues, and we have blind people, we have colorblind people. So
right, but again, just say we restrict ourselves to like people who can actually see color,
okay.
right? They are seeing a color, like they would say,
Yeah.
I am seeing that I see right now that the sky is is green or blue.
Yeah,
or,
yeah.
you know, whatever.
Yeah, so
Maybe
so
there's something. Maybe they have something in their eye, all right,
Yeah.
or whatever. But nonetheless, they're seeing a color. So wouldn't that color therefore exist?
well, the reason why I would say no is so like the concept of color. See, okay, so the whole idea is that color is just a abstract. It's an abstract thing that is interpreted by the brain, and we see, and we happen to call this in color, right? So like
Yeah.
when light hits, let's see, like a rose, right? So like a rose is what we call red, right? So
Sure.
when light hits the petals of a rose, it only is reflecting a certain wavelength of light.
Yeah, it
And-
absorbs the other wavelengths.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, exactly. So only one kind of wavelength of light is being emitted from it, right?
Sure.
So the whole argument here is, we call that red, but all it is the brain's invention of observing a particular wavelength of light.
Well, sure, but I mean that's kind of what I'm just trying to like. By what other means would you ever be able to say that something exists, or is I mean that's all you have.
So like
Really, people only have obviously the five senses. Some might say
so
there might be someone with a sixth sense, but that's
so the only
that's
way
another matter.
the only way you could say that color objectively exists, right, is if there are no people, but there are still colors. But the whole idea is no, not even just people. There are no observers, but there's color. So the only way color can actually exist in the physical world, independent of, an observer, is you take out the observer, is color still applicable? Is it still even possible? And the answer is no, because color is a sight that requires a observer. So without an observer, there is no color.
Well, yeah, sure, but the thing which we interpret as color would still exist. I mean, all you're saying is that if there's no one there to see it, it can't be seen, right?
Yeah, because it's a sight.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
kind of an obvious. I mean, it's almost like you're saying that. I'm trying to think of the words to put it into. It just seems like a very. I don't want to say cheap way, but I guess.
Yeah, so
It just kind of.
I think I know what you're
yeah.
trying to say. So basically what I would argue is color in one sense does exist because it is something we subjectively observe
Sure.
through
yeah.
through a human being with functioning eyes, right? And so like for me, we have this concept of color and this word color, and I can perceive differences in the hues of certain objects. That's true, and like for me, for the individual seeing that, it does exist in a sense because it's a subjective kind of existence, right? Like if you play a video game or whatever, like in a subjective sense, you're kind of doing what's in the video game. Like if you were playing like I don't know, something like a first person shooter, right? Like you're subjectively playing this game as if you were actually there, but is any of that actually happening? No, like it's like an illusion, it's a simulation, it's a
Sure. I mean,
you know,
you're just manipulating bits on a machine.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I would agree in one sense you could argue that color does exist, but only in the case where it's a subjective kind of reality thing, but you wouldn't be able to say that color can objectively exist because, like I said, without a human being to observe a color, there is no color, because the color is simply a manifestation of how your brain perceives certain wavelengths of light.
Yeah, but I mean, there is some consensus among people, right? Like if you hold up an apple,
Yeah.
right? Obviously a red, I'm just
Yeah.
gonna for a red, I don't know what would you call it? Let's say green, a Granny Smith apple.
Granny
right?
Smith, yes,
bright
yeah.
green, shiny.
Yeah.
Most people would say, okay, it's bright, it's green,
Yeah.
and shiny. I mean, I'm just what to the observer, this is real. I mean, it's a
Yes,
it's a
yeah, yeah, oh, yeah.
characteristic of the object,
Yeah, so
right?
it's as if you were playing a video game. It's real to you.
yeah, but
but
it's not just real to me. It's real to anyone walking in and looking at that apple.
What if they're all right? But
Yeah,
we're gonna restrict it to
Yeah, we're gonna restrict it
okay.
to people who can actually,
Okay.
who actually have the proper
But-
sense.
But
of
I
sight.
would say, like the case of a blind person does make that kind of argument, because they're a human being, right? But they're not an observer in the sense of sight, so they cannot observe anything. So you would be able to say, like that blind person, like completely blind.
Sure.
Let's say they were born completely blind from birth, right? That person could legitimately say nothing exists, and there would be absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Well, they'd say the color doesn't exist. The apple, they could touch it.
They
Assuming
could-
they have the sense of touch.
they could touch it, but
Yeah. And
but, like-
interact with it in some way.
they could still interact with it, but like obviously sight is like the most kind of I don't know what the word would be. It's like the most resonant kind of thing for like a human being. Like it's like the most arguably one of the most important senses,
Yeah. Yeah. I
Like-
mean, you can't really,
because you literally cannot function without it,
Well, I mean, obviously, blind people can. But
without help.
actually, well, that's a topic for another show. But,
Yeah. It's
But I see what you're saying. Like,
yeah.
it's very important to most people's lives.
Because look,
the
'cause-
vast majority.
because like without hearing, right?
Yeah,
You could still drive. You could still do shit.
but you can't. Yeah, without, and I guess
Without
thinking-
taste, you could still eat. Without scent, you could still eat. Like
you can
like
still
it's not.
sustain yourself.
Yeah, like it's not harming. But if you're blind, you're screwed. Like
Yeah, I mean,
Like, without-
especially in like evolutionary terms, you're
Oh, yeah.
blind. You're left on the.
Yeah,
You're left
done.
on the savannah for the wolves.
Yeah.
Basically.
See, the only reason blind people can, like that's the thing, is because blind people can survive today because of all the, technology we have and everything, and things that can, help people.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is one argument that I would, use, is that, we do have blind people that can observe, can't see any color, but yeah, so for sure we can get like a general consensus of, an apple, a Granny Smith apple is green,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
We can get that consensus for the most part. But the only problem with that, and using that to say something exists, is you could also get, for the majority of the world, right? They believe God exists, right? And this is a topic
well,
of
a type of. It
Yeah.
depends how you break it down, but
just some
form of
kind of God
supernatural-
or gods.
yeah, some sort
Yeah.
of supernatural being that has a varying level of impact.
Yeah. So
Or beings. In
So-
the case of
so,
polytheists. Yeah.
a majority of people believe that is real, and you can get a consensus that, okay, God exists. But the problem is, do we know that for sure? And the whole thing is subjectively for those individuals, God does exist. In
Yeah,
a
but
sense, you
I
can
think
argue.
at that point, and this I can't.
But
tell,
objectively,
Yeah.
does that concept exist, or thing exist? We don't know.
Well,
We would
I
have,
think at that point you're just getting into varying levels of subjectivity. I mean, the people who do believe in some form of supernatural being, they'll cite some holy text, or they'll cite a holy person, or someone contemporary, or something that
Yeah.
they can put in your face and say, look, this person says that God exists, or in this book says that the person who said that is a valid source, right? Something like that. But to an atheist, right, that's just complete bull. I mean, we could
So
probably,
then who's right?
yeah, but we could that's
Subjectively, they're both right.
well, again, varying degrees of subjectivity. I think this might be getting quite off topic, but I think the religious person would have a much higher level of subjectivity in that case than the atheist, because you're saying all these things, these books, these holy people, prophets, etc., are all true, right? As fact, these are the axioms of my system.
Yeah.
And you can't just go around questioning this. I mean,
But I
maybe
mean,
that's probably a great oversimplification.
But see, so let's say there's people who, as like an axiom, or just they take something for a fact that God exists. For them, you could definitely say that God does exist for those people, and then I would say that that's perfectly okay, because if you look at, and this is something that we brought up when we were writing on the board about all this stuff.
Yeah.
That the whole field of mathematics, right? So the whole field of mathematics is based upon axioms that we take as true for granted. Like basically the same thing, and then we build off of it.
Yeah.
So and that's okay, but basically, and this
But
was
it depends. I mean, when you're defining when you're saying, okay, these are my axioms, it's generally best to not, set the have a small piece of the pie as those axioms, like have as few as possible, and make as many theorems from those axioms. Assuming you're wanting to set the axioms as bedrock, and build up from there.
Yeah, that would be the best
Right.
way to, and this is something that we also brought up that I think is actually really, really interesting. So,
Should we introduce the bigger topic here? Because I think we've kind of strayed. We're not talking about color anymore, for a
all right,
long
yeah.
shot.
So, basically,
yeah.
what we're branching out to is, does anything objectively exist? Why or why not? That's basically what we're branching out to at this point.
Yeah.
Like, we started with color, and then sound, and then, used an example with religion and God, and now we're just onto anything, right? So, this is really
just
interesting here. So,
Opening up Pandora's box.
yeah.
With this.
So one of the things that we talked about that I actually didn't think of before we met is that, okay, so like the whole branch of mathematics, right? So you have these axioms in place, and then we build off of them, right? But
Yeah, what's the one that we learned in analysis? I forget.
the axiom of completeness.
Yeah, axiom of completeness.
Which is if you don't have that, you don't have analysis.
Do you remember what that is again?
It was every bounded non-empty set has a maximum.
Okay, that'll take
or
away.
a supermum.
I was thinking
Yeah.
maybe we could stop for a second and explain that, but I think that'd require about a month of analysis.
Well, no. So all right. So
Okay, all right.
so
Take a shot.
basically, all right. So the axiom of completeness is an axiom in mathematics that just says if you have a set of, it could be anything, but let's just say numbers, just for simplicity. If you have a set of numbers that are bounded, either above, so there's a number you can come up with that's greater than any number in the set, or bounded below, there's a number smaller than any number in the set that you can come up with, right? So it's bounded. So a set of numbers, let's just say that it's bounded, and it's non-empty.
Right, so there's actual other numbers
there's-
in it. It's not
yeah,
just completely blank.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
So
now-
let's say you have the set of numbers 1, 2, 5, right? It's bounded above by 6, you could say, and it's bounded below by 0.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's a lot simpler than I was imagining it.
Yeah,
Because
so-
I guess it's an axiom. So
and
it has to
then
be simple.
Basically, the whole point of it is that, okay, so from that you can prove that we have maximums and minimums and supermums and infimums and
Yeah, and then this,
so on and so forth.
And this is kind of if I remember correctly, this is kind of a very foundational theorem that really ends up producing most of the mathematics that you may not know about, but that you might experience in daily life, right? It leads to not algebra, but calculus, right? It leads to differentiability
Yeah.
and integration and all these. I mean, just all these useful, very useful formulae and concepts, without which we would be, well, pretty blind, and unable to develop a lot of the amazing technology we have today, and all that from something that cannot be, or at least has not yet been proven.
Well, yeah, because, and then this is where we get into it. So my whole argument that we talked about was, I'm basically saying the whole idea of mathematics, and you can branch this off to basically anything science and whatnot. You can basically say that this is an attempt, by taking certain things as truth, you can simplify things and basically create an objective, a quote-unquote objective reality. And that's the whole goal, right? Because you have a statement that we all take for granted, like 2 + 2 = 4, right? Nobody's going to tell you 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4, okay? And
I mean,
Don't you dare,
we
Ben.
could do this.
Don't you dare,
We could-
don't you dare tell me.
Vinny, that's the exact feeling I had when you sat down and said, "Hey guys, guess what? Color doesn't exist." But,
Exactly. So
but go on. Go on.
So the whole point is that nobody's going to disagree with you on that. I mean, any sane person wouldn't disagree with you. But the reality is, you really could just as well say 2 + 2 = 5, because if you just take your axioms to be something that you can get that fact out of, then you're good.
Yeah,
So-
I actually just thought about this. You've taken computer architecture,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, you could say, okay, you know what? I'm not really adding these numbers in decimal. I'm adding them in some abstract bases,
Yeah.
right? I'm adding them in some way
Yeah.
where you might interpret the answer as necessarily being 4.
Mhm.
But in my system, in my set of rules,
Yeah.
2 + 2 = 5.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
On
that's the whole point.
on a certain level, though, it's kind of a dick move.
Well, yes, because
you have all these, because you already have these systems, and I guess this is, I mean, what it really comes down to is the fact that you have these systems of practicality, right? They work, right?
Yeah.
You can, right, like I just said a while ago, you can get, computer graphics, you can get space flight trajectories, all from this one theorem, which, yeah, I guess it is a theorem, but really an axiom that no one has proven yet, and it's all derivable, whatever. It all comes from this one theorem that basically stands on nothing, that is
Yeah.
just taken for granted.
yeah.
And once you realize that, and
The whole world falls
the
apart.
whole world falls apart. The
Yeah.
whole
Because
freaking world.
what we're doing is we're taking things as truth to make things easier, to create a consistent, which is important. That's the whole reason why 2 + 2 = 4 is because it's consistent.
within the system
Yes.
of axioms and theorems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
and it's much easier to understand. It's consistent. It doesn't produce things that aren't rooted in the real world. Like, for instance, if I have 2 objects and then I take another 2 objects into my little group, well, now I have 4 objects, not 5, right?
Right.
So it's just kind of a way to make things consistent and make things reliable and easier to understand, and so that we can do things in the real world using math, like you said.
And really, when you start to say that your system is complete bull, right? So I mean, if you have an evolutionary biologist and some fundamentalist creationist, right,
Mhm.
in a debate, the creationists will say, "Oh no, come on, the world is too complex and beautiful to have been created by chance," and the evolutionary biologist will say, "No, you're just interpreting the beauty and the complexity as such. It just so happens that you have evolved to the point that you are able to appreciate these things, but you're meant to be running from lions on the savannah and stuff like that."
Mhm.
And so just really saying, I mean, what's the argument? Finding a pocket watch in a field, right? What's
Yeah.
the more rational argument that someone left it there, that God must have created it? That's not really, we probably shouldn't go into that, but it's something along those lines. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just really surprising when you start to think that deep about things, because then you realize that, like, everything we know is because, like,
Of assumptions.
yeah,
They're just either by,
everything we know and do comes down to basic assumptions that we have not proved objectively true. And then, so that's the whole root of this argument, is that nothing can objectively exist because we have not objectively proved all our assumptions. If we did, then boom, we're done. Because then if the assumptions are rooted in objective reality, then everything else is, because everything else is derived from it, right?
sure, yeah, but I again, I have to kind of take the point of view of just I mean, not to sound too pretentious and, living in a freaking ivory tower, but the average person, I would have to imagine, hearing all this, would basically say, okay, but I can agree that I can see that the sky is blue. You can see that the sky is blue. My whole town can see that the sky is blue. And it's not exactly a strong argument. I mean, you might even say it's not really an argument at all, truth by consensus.
Yeah.
But at some level, you would expect that something that is true can be, is inherently observable by most people, right?
Yeah.
The common example, or the average person, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
Most people.
Yeah, and that's exactly my argument. My argument is we can have a subjective truth, right? And we know that from our everyday lives. We haven't, like, each and every one of us has a subjective truth about just about everything. But to say, hey, numbers objectively exist, that would be a false statement.
Well,
because
I guess
numbers.
To really boil down my objection to this, it's that the use of objective seems to be that you're using it in a way that most people would never use it. You know what I mean? Like, it seems to be just completely confined to this academic context.
So let me just quickly go and look up the the textbook definition of objective, like from, I guess, what, like the Oxford Dictionary or something.
I have it right now. It's good. I got it. Well, this is from Griffith. Oh, Griffith University in Australia.
Okay.
That's cool. The objective reality is the collection of things that we are sure exist independently of us.
And that's the key word, is independent.
Independently. But I'm just wondering who on earth came up with this definition.
It's a terrible definition, because by creation, by defining objective that way, you're saying nothing is objective.
You're really defining,
because
nothing. I mean, that's my main objection.
Yeah.
Like, you're defining objective in a way to say that nothing exists. You're not proving it. You're taking it as another axiom.
There you go. And then we go down the rabbit hole even deeper.
But here's the thing: it's in the same way that the atheist would have big objections to a creationist saying that all that has been created by God.
Wait.
It's really
quickly.
Sure.
Let's define quickly in your example here what you mean by atheist, because
that's a good point.
People have different
quite
definitions of that. So
I guess someone who, I mean, it kind of ranges.
Because
there's
some
kind
might
of
say
a bit of a spectrum of it. But if I could just, I mean, some people's interpretation of this, and some people would outright say that they know for sure that there is no God, right? There's no supernatural being on a cloud somewhere pulling the strings, or who started everything off, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The more, I guess, logically sound argument would be that there's simply not enough evidence there's as much evidence that God exists as there is that leprechauns or unicorns exist, right? That is to say, I don't believe in leprechauns and unicorns because no one has shown me a leprechaun or a unicorn. No, there's no fossils. There's simply not enough evidence, and no one has or has presented enough evidence to me to make the case.
Yeah.
I guess that's the soundest argument.
So
that the atheist has.
The technical definition I believe of atheist is simply that is a lack of belief in a God. So technically, being an atheist does not mean you claim that there are no gods, because to claim that there are no gods is arguably just as wrong as claiming that there are.
Sure, but I think I'd love to keep talking about this, but to get back to the main point is that the atheist's objection to the I keep saying creationist, but I guess just religious person in general would be that your axiom's too big, right? You're saying that all this is taken almost for granted, right? Everything, and that's kind of the same. That's kind of the same objection I have to this definition of objective reality, right? It's saying as an axiomatic truth that nothing. And maybe I'm probably misunderstanding it. I don't know. You're probably more well read on this than I am. But when I'm hearing it, I'm hearing that you're just saying from the beginning nothing can be true, objectively, which really clashes with. I mean, I can say. I mean, most people would say I objectively, or it just kind of really clashes with common parlance. Of the use of the word. Like I mean, just to. I guess delve into common parlance. Like when I say that I objectively know something, right? People say that science is objective. What they mean is that you've arrived at the conclusions in science through means that are not biased, right? They don't rely on to hell with your personal opinion. It's what you can prove by gathering evidence and with sound theory. Whereas subjective in common parlance would mean I feel like this should be wrong, or according to this holy book, or according to this appeal from authority, right? Someone more powerful than I am, or me as a more powerful person in society, or what have you. I am saying from this supposedly higher position what is correct, rather than finding evidence for it. So when people say that something has been determined objectively, I think what they usually mean. Yeah. And again, that's another paradox. That's another paradox we can get into. Oh yeah. Kind of fun. But what they usually mean is that there's a significant amount of evidence for the proposition, whereas subjective, you're really not. To go to like rhetorical appeals, right? Objective would be you're appealing to logos, right? You're appealing to logic, evidence, reason. Anything other than that, pathos or ethos. So that's emotion and appeal to emotion, and then appeal to authority would be subjective. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty deep, because you could just keep going with this forever and ever. Like
you could disprove yourself out of existence.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of a South Park episode. You remember that?
No.
Oh my God, it's great. It's kind of what I forget the character. Stan. It was Stan. Yeah. So Stan, for some reason, starts reading all this philosophy, and he's going on to I don't know, what are the nihilists and stuff like that? Kant, Hegel, Nietzsche. They're not all nihilists, I don't think. Right. I'm uneducated on this stuff, so I'm just talking out of my ass here. But he starts reading all this stuff, and eventually he just gets to a point where he realizes, convinces himself that he doesn't exist, and poof, he's gone. Like in the show, he just disappears, and like just becomes this like ephemeral ghost. Yeah. That's just all. It's trippy, but that's kind of where you go. That's kind of where this path leads.
Because without these assumptions that we don't know that are true or not, that also allow us to use science to, in the vernacular, to objectively prove things, right?
Yeah.
Then you wouldn't be able to do any of that without these assumptions that we make. So really, this all comes down to we're creating what I called it was like a pseudo objective reality, basically.
Sure.
So so we're trying to create an objective reality out of a world that is purely subjective in every way possible, because each of us are human, and everything we do is biased, everything we experience is biased, everything we experience is subjective, right?
To a certain degree, but again, when you're, I'm just thinking of the practical implications of this, right? When you're saying that everything is subjective, there are obviously varying levels,
Because
right? Because there's a difference between taking the entire pie as your axiom and saying, okay, here's one slice. I'm just going to assume this is true for now, and I'm going to prove the rest.
yeah.
Whereas some people might say, all right, 90% of this is true, and I'm going to prove the other 10%.
But see, is any of that? But see, I would argue.
Is any of that invalid?
I would say both are just as valid as each other, because you're still. If you assume a small thing,
Sure.
you might as well assume a big thing,
Why? Why?
because you're still assuming something is true when it might or might not be.
Yeah, but
In either case, so in that respect, I would say they're the same. But in terms of practicality and consistency and real world kind of shit, it's better to just assume the minimum and go from there. But there's nothing stopping you and nothing saying that it's wrong to assume more and then go from there. There's nothing inherently wrong with that in any way whatsoever. It's just not. It just might not be practical.
It's difficult to stomach.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to stomach, and you would get a lot of. God, I really hate the fact that I'm having to assume that I know what people would do, because I really hate assuming.
I
this.
think
but
I think
have
every
to
kind of person
think-
would be angry at hearing this.
Yeah,
because
I'd have to think that whoever decides, okay, I'm getting this 90%. That's the assumption.
Yeah.
I think most people would think that person's full of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it kind of also just comes back to the really bad situation of defining truth in a way by consensus.
So
I mean, there's huge problems with that.
So this whole thing goes into this now. So think of the word experience, right? Experience implies subjectivity because it is an experience.
Sure. Yeah.
So everything we do as a human species
Is necessarily subjective.
is necessarily
Yeah,
subjective
yeah.
because everything we do, science, every experiment we conduct, everything we do with history, everything we do with anything is a human doing it. And so it is, by definition, it is biased, it is subjective.
Yeah, but you can't really. Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. So the true definition of objectivity is complete independence,
which
which
never will
which
it
is
will never exist.
yes, basically yes. But to make things
So
easier,
it's impractical.
exactly to make things
Yeah.
easier, we say, okay, we're gonna kind of redefine what this word is meaning so that we can actually use it to fucking do things and and to have farms and then cities and then electricity and so on and so forth.
So on and so forth, etc.
But yeah, it's all quite fascinating because it really, and this is like the South Park episode, right? So it all comes down to, once you realize all of this,
No, sorry, you were like way too close.
Oh,
to the
sorry.
mic. Yeah, I just heard it spike. Yeah.
once you realize this, you realize basically that everything is like not really there. It's like everything is just your illusion in a sense. So
Yeah.
and so
Well-
and so I guess that's where like the episode is kind of going, because once
Yeah.
you realize that, hey, everything that I'm doing and experiencing, all of this is just my illusion.
Yeah,
And-
then you just go straight you're making a beeline straight for nihilism because then nothing.
No.
No?
No. Definitely not. Because
Definitely not. All right.
Because,
well, then,
because,
all right. Explain to me, because my understanding
Okay.
of nihilism is kind of, I don't know. When you use nihilist in a
Yeah,
general
yeah.
sense, you usually mean someone who just thinks, okay,
nothing
fuck
matters.
it, fucking nothing matters.
Yeah.
I don't matter. You don't matter.
But-
I'm just gonna chain smoke and drink
Yeah,
and whatever
exactly.
until I'm dead. Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Albert Camus? Albert Camus. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
He wrote a book, and I forget what the book is called. It's some novel, and basically the novel is like an existential kind of novel where the main character, the main character and the author basically argue that the only philosophical question is whether you should kill yourself or not.
I remember I've heard about this.
Yes.
I don't. Yeah. I haven't read it, but
So
I've
that
heard, okay.
that is what I would
Yeah.
consider like kind of a nihilistic kind of standpoint, is that the only question is should you kill yourself or not. That is what I would kind of define as like a pretty nihilistic way of looking at things. But to my argument, I'm definitely not arguing for nihilism in any way, because think about it like this. Just because everything is an illusion, does that make it any less beautiful, important than if it wasn't? Because like when you go see a magician and he's performing all these crazy acts and stunts and tricks, and it's an illusion, it's not like there, but if you're just take yourself outside of that and you just experience it in like the present moment, it is real.
Sure.
And it's just as beautiful.
Yeah, it's like going to see a play, right? No one's actually being
Exact-
stabbed
exactly.
through no one's actually being stabbed.
No one's
through this-
dying.
through the
Nobody-
stab. No one, like there's no poisonings. There's
Yeah.
no, I don't know, whatever, floods,
Exactly.
hurricanes,
And
what other props they use. It's all using things that you think are real
And at the
in
play,
order to like convince your mind that you're witnessing something that is
exactly.
Yeah.
And the best actor can convince you of that. And plays are a very good analogy for just life in general, because something really interesting about that I've looked into and heard about is, so the word person, right?
All right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I
So
know
the word,
yeah.
Okay, yeah. So the word person, right?
Yeah.
In nowadays in our language, the word person is like, I'm a person, you're a person, Ben, and we have people, right?
Right.
Okay. In I think, ancient Greece and everything, they would have like the comedies and the tragedies and everything, all that.
Sure.
So the word they used came from, I believe, the Latin personae, and
No, it probably would have been passed from Greek to Latin.
or that.
Yeah,
but
but anyways.
I believe the Latin version of it is personae, right? And
yeah.
and
that sounds
personae
right.
personae means not person, it means mask. And so in like the list
Yeah,
on,
yeah, like a persona. You're putting on a persona. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So people, it's just a mask. It's just the layers and layers of this thing you call you that
Yeah.
that
I mean,
you
this
created.
isn't to say that they didn't have a word for human, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. But
Yeah.
that word in particular just means a mask. And when you think about it, everyone is this kind of onion where
Oh boy.
where
The Shrek.
no yeah.
Yeah.
So everybody is this onion where you want to find, okay, what makes a person, right? So you peel back all of the layers, right?
Right.
And what happens when you get to the end? It's nothing, because an onion is just layers. And so you peel back all the layers of the, like you take all the masks off, and what's left? Nothing.
Yeah, I mean,
And so the whole thing is just because something or someone or like the idea of the self or anything, even if it is an illusion, it doesn't make things less important or anything like that, because what we just said, it's still an experience.
At the very least, you still think you there, whether objectively or not. You're still living.
Exactly, because
You can still experience things to some
Yeah.
degree. Yeah.
because you're experiencing, and the fact that you can experience means, hey, this
Means
is good.
Means
This
that
is
I exist.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, something that I was just really
Well,
thinking about when we were talking
Not
about...
that you exist objectively, that you just exist in some possible way.
Sure, but what I was thinking of when we were, not that long ago, speaking about nihilism, just kind of getting to the point where, I mean, what you're really doing is you're doubting that you know anything at all. And I was just thinking, this is like...
Well, no. The root of it really, the root of it really is not that I don't think I know something for sure or not. That is not the root question. The root question here is there this you? And we talked about this too at
that's
lunch a
another
lot.
annoying thing.
And
yeah.
this is something where this lends itself perfectly to this whole shit show here. So the whole idea here is literally the most root question is there a you, or is there a me, or is there the I, is there the self? And the whole argument.
Sure, but the best you can come up with is that, yeah, I'm talking about the physical body, to which I'm pointing at right now, that people who are listening in cannot see. But I believe
That's the
I
best
think they
kind
have
of
an idea.
definition. But see, the problem with that
Is that
definition.
once you die, right? You're no longer you. Once you lose a limb, you're no longer you.
Yeah.
I mean, what did I have written down here? This is really, I think I have it right. The ship of Theseus. That's kind of the idea. You know, you've heard of that?
I remember you mentioned that before.
So the ship of Theseus is the idea. I think it was. I forget exactly what it's from. But it's the basic idea is this: you have a ship, it leaves port, sails around for many years, many years.
Yeah.
Needs a lot of repairs, right? You need to change the sails, the masts, the planks in the hull, the keel, whatever the ship is made of, it'll eventually wear out. Now you could have something that's, maybe the anchor, right? Maybe the anchor will survive for a long time. So eventually, let's say you've been at sea for many years, obviously going into ports and whatever, but eventually you come back home, right, to wherever you first left from. Is the ship the same ship that left? Because that's basically the question you're asking. Is it like, just because you keep over time keep continuously applying this label to this thing that
Yeah.
you're on, right? Despite all the
Yeah.
repairs and replacements, and maybe it's not even you that's sailing back in. It's it's your son or your daughter or whatever. Your first mate who took over.
I have
when
the
you die.
perfect. I have the perfect response.
Is
to
that ship still
Exactly.
the ship of Theseus?
So the whole thing is okay.
And I probably got the name
This
wrong.
is literally something straight out of Eastern philosophy. Okay,
I think it's Theseus, Greek, close enough, but
if you look into Eastern philosophy, one of the main things that they argue is one that the illusion of self basically is one of them, and the other one is that the you that you were when you walked in this room is not the same you that you were when you walked out. Because think about it this way. Everything in the world is in a constant state of decay, basically, and or growth.
Question: can we play a clip? Would it be a good idea to play a clip from YouTube? I think you know what I'm thinking of.
What
Rush
clip?
Hour. All right, no, I won't.
Really?
I don't want to mention it. Type in. Just a second, folks. There was just a really good. No, go back to YouTube.
Oh.
Yeah, go back to. I think we can play it.
Okay.
I think we can play it. It's just this. It's comedic. Rush Hour, You and Me, first one. There it is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna cut out for a second and play. It's the first thing.
This is great.
It's the first thing that popped into my mind when we started talking about Are You and Me, because Well, if you've seen the movie, you already know what the hell we're talking about. Let's hit it.
Li Jun! Ching Li! May I help you?
We'll be asking the questions, old man. Who are you?
You.
No, not me, you.
Yes, I am you.
Just answer the damn questions. Who are you?
I have told you.
Are you deaf?
No, you is blind.
I'm not blind, you blind.
That is what I just said.
You just said what?
I did not say what. I said you.
That's what I'm asking you.
And you is answering.
Shut up. You.
Yes?
Not you, him. What's your name?
Me.
Yes, you.
I am me. He's me. And I'm you.
And I'm about to whoop your old ass, man, because I'm sick of playing games. You, me, everybody's ass around here. Him. I'm going to kick his ass. I'm sick of it.
Let me
Lee, no, Lee, no.
师傅
So that's kind of the idea that I'm thinking of.
He is me and I am you.
Yeah,
That's the whole idea.
I mean, that's really. I mean, maybe it's. Let me turn that up a little bit. It's kind of. That's kind of the stereotypical. Maybe it's just my stereotypical, but imagination of Eastern philosophy, right? I am you. I am. You know, the river
Well, yeah,
that's flowing.
because-
I'm the rock that's in the
Exactly.
river. Whatever.
And-
whatever. What have you.
And the whole idea is that you are everything that there is, which is like like
Which is nothing.
which is the universe. I guess if you want to.
But that's then nothing if you bring it on home, right?
Yeah.
If you combine the,
Because there's a great quote. I forget who it's by, but it's everything is nothing with a twist. Have you ever heard that before?
that's a good question.
Look that up. Look that up. I forget who said that. Forget where that was from.
Let's see. Dude, you're on my mic now.
Kurt Vonnegut. That's right. Kurt Vonnegut. That's who said it.
Oh man, you're making me feel guilty for not knowing who any of these people are.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good quote for that too. Everything is nothing with a twist. So it's all basically the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it just sounds kind of right off the ear. It sounds like bullshit, right? I mean, this isn't to say that all of Eastern philosophy, all philosophy in general, is bullshit. That'd kind of ruin the point of the show, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But I mean, I can differentiate myself from you,
Yeah.
right? We occupy different
If
points in space. We can never occupy the same point in
but
space.
but see once again the real question is what is the point you? And the whole thing when you get right down to it is you cannot point you can't pin it down. You can't say okay this is me right here. There is no
this is me right here. I'm sitting. I'm speaking.
But see, that is not a point in space because a point in space is an abstract concept. And the whole idea with Eastern philosophy is basically, it's like the whole goal is to get rid of concepts because concept isn't reality, basically.
To get wait concepts? You mean what categories? Anything? Any kind of
Anything. Literally
any kind of
any-
distinction?
Yes, because
Well, that's incredibly impractical.
it is. But the whole idea is that we only have concepts because it is practical.
Sure.
'Cause
Okay, so then the real disagreement is how much practicality do you want to get out of your philosophy? Because I mean, even the secluded, I don't know, Shaolin monk in the highest mountain
Yeah.
of China has to make the distinction between the food he's going to eat in the morning and what's poisonous.
Yes.
Right. That is those are categorical distinctions. You can't simply say, "Oh, that hemlock over there, that is the food. I will eat the food because I am the
Yeah.
hemlock. I will eat myself." That he die.
But the whole thing is, the whole goal is that you don't think in concepts anymore. You don't think in language. You just
But
do.
you
Like,
act,
look,
but you do act in these
but look.
ways. Yeah.
So ready? This is a really good point now. If you look at a moth, right?
sure.
A moth flies around and does what it has to do. It doesn't think. It's literally on autopilot basically. it just does what it does, right? It flies around,
Well,
eats.
it has little self-awareness. I mean, that's kind of getting into the distinction between people
No.
and animals.
Well, see, so the whole thing is that something like a moth or a fly, right? They don't
Sure.
think. They don't think. They just do. And so they are free from the idea of concepts, and they just do what they do, and whether they live or die, like a moth flies around, it eats, and then after that, let's say it flies into a candle and it dies.
Sure.
It doesn't worry previously, like, oh wait, I might die, or oh wait, I know I'm gonna die.
Right. It has no
just,
concept of its own mortality in the same way that people do.
It just goes around.
I mean, it knows enough to like fly away from a bird, right?
Yes.
Like so, it has.
But it doesn't have to think about it. It just does it. It's just boom. It just does it.
Yeah, it's an autonomic response. Sure.
See, and so the whole idea is, this is like why the humans are so screwed, because there was a time when our human-like ancestors didn't have
Several 100,000 years ago, millions of.
where they didn't have this thought.
Well, they had no time. They were just worried about running away from
They
a
were
lion or
they were
a
basically
leopard or
they were
whatever.
basically on autopilot. They had no anxiety. They had no worries. They had no concept of like
Well, it would
self.
depend what you.
They had no concept of anything.
It would depend what you mean by worry and think, right? Because
see-
thinking. Wow, this kind of fucked. You could just define it as neurons firing in the brain,
Well, no.
right? As a processing of information comes in.
I am saying
your brain
thinking.
processes it.
That's
and then
not thinking.
and then there's an output.
That's a reflex.
Reflex, sure, but
So thinking, what I'm saying is thinking is being self-aware to the point where you realize what's like everything going on around you, and
I guess that is what would be the main distinction between
like okay here you
between
go.
people and
Here you
animals,
go.
right?
Here-
I'm just trying to think of another example. Like, say a pack of wolves, right?
Yeah.
Pack of wolves attacks a person.
Yeah.
It's middle of winter. They're fucking hungry. It's not as if they're doing this for some
Yeah.
malicious intent,
Yeah.
right? They just need to eat.
Yeah.
Person attacks, I don't know, a dog, right? Dog hasn't bitten anybody. It's just
Yeah.
person attacks it.
Yeah.
Or even another person, right? A person attacks another person.
Yeah.
They know a human being knows how to cause pain.
Yeah.
In a way that a wolf does not.
Yeah.
Right. A wolf doesn't know, or at least doesn't have the capacity to fully think through the consequences
Or
of biting into
think
somebody,
at all, because
or have any concern whatsoever of
because
the pain
it doesn't have
they might cause.
because all these animals, they don't have this concept of thinking, or this concept of self, or the concept of other. They don't operate on concepts, and the whole idea is that concepts are just a human thing, and
Yeah, they literally don't have the brains for it. Their brains are, again,
Not-
things I don't know about, but
not to say
but they're-
inferior brains.
they're designed for a different purpose.
It's just a brain that is inherently different than that of a human.
Yeah,
But
we're freaking mutants.
yes,
People are mutants. Like there's no biological reason to be having this conversation right now, so far as I can
Yeah,
tell.
oh yeah. So
Like we should be out gathering berries and hunting deer or something.
this is why it gets really interesting, because basically what I was saying before, there was a time when our ancestors didn't have any worries, no concepts, and they just did what they did and lived and then died, and then that was it, and then they had kids and whatnot, or they didn't, and then nobody had any worries, nobody had anything, and then there was a certain point when as the quote goes, where the paradise was lost, basically, and that
All right, okay. So you're referring to eating from the tree of what knowledge or whatever.
Basically,
the
yes.
biblical thing. Okay, sure.
basically, yeah.
Yeah.
There was a certain moment where, okay, now not only can I do I'm thinking about what I do, and then I'm thinking about what I do, and then thinking about what I do.
Yeah, yeah.
And
they
so
just
on.
got to these meta levels of
And
yeah.
and then it just goes on to absurdity, and this is why we have anxiety and mental illness and whatever. And it is not just mental illness is not just a human thing. There are dogs and other animals that experience certain mental illnesses because they've evolved to their brains to a certain point where they can experience those kind of dysfunctions.
Yeah.
But one thing, and this is really interesting, no other animal has the only like mental illness that no other animal could like has ever been documented of like having or anything like that is schizophrenia. And
No other species
Yeah.
of animal has schizophrenia.
So
So it's a
schizophrenia
uniquely human thing.
Schizophrenia makes us human, basically. That's what I'm saying.
Wow, that's a
Isn't that insane?
yeah, that kind of. Well, I wouldn't.
And it
I wouldn't
makes-
say it's a way that we are different. It's one way that we're differentiated from animals. I wouldn't call it the defining characteristic. But I
you
see
could
what-
if you wanted
I see
to.
what you're saying. We have the capacity, because we have the capacity to go to these meta levels of experience.
And so
we
what,
also have.
and
There's
so
also
Ben,
the capacity for that to go completely sideways.
and so what happens in schizophrenia?
you think you're Napoleon.
and in a way you are Napoleon because your brain is
Yeah.
is on such another level where you're like you're literally so hyper aware that you lose all awareness in a way because you're so like advanced to the point where you can think about thinking and so on and so forth.
Even that sounds like something a schizophrenic person would say. Like I'm thinking, you know,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah. So
Probably not exactly the best
just-
thing to say, but
it's just
Yeah.
fascinating because this whole idea of self and concepts has in one way you can argue ruined the human race. In another way you could say
well, without it, we'd still be
living in huts.
without
Or not even living huts.
Without that ability, we'd be one step. I mean, some say we are still one step, but we would be literally one, or not literally.
We would be on the
We'd
same
be-
level as everything else.
We'd be one step away from being an ape. I mean, to be honest, like,
But see,
without
what-
that ability to
but see,
abstract.
what is
and think.
inherently wrong with that though? Nothing is.
Well, there's nothing.
And so this is another.
Well, it's kind of what I'm thinking of now is there's this I forget what book it is. I'm trying to. I forget exactly where it's from, but the basic idea is this, right? I didn't need to worry about my son or daughter being, I didn't need to worry much about my kids, now, as I did, like say I'm someone from the, like turn of the century,
Yeah.
right? Fastest form of travel is a steamboat.
Yeah.
Right, and that's the fastest form of communication as well. All right, say I was, born in, I don't know, 1880, had kids 1900, no radio yet, no telegram, but no
Yeah.
transcontinental radio or communication or
nothing
no
like
no instantaneous communication between the Americas and Europe.
Yeah.
Right, and say I'm I'm in like, all right, sorry again, getting used to this shit. But say I'm like, turn of the century Englishman, right?
Yeah.
Born in 1880,
Yeah.
had kids 1900, and then in, say 1915, right? Those kids, they somehow moved to America, right?
Yeah.
Before that time, before they moved, I could just fucking yell down the street. Or I could, run over to where they were, because chances are they were within walking distance or horse distance or train distance.
Yeah.
But now they're intercontinental distance.
And
And
then
I never needed to worry about the fact that they were literally an ocean away before someone invented the radio, or
Exactly.
before someone, well, not really the radio, but before someone invented or laid down intercon, whatever, cables between England and America.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like the new invention on the block, right? While bringing all these benefits, also happens to bring all these new anxieties, and it's the same thing with the development of the human brain. right? I mean, it's basically what you said, right? You never needed to worry about thinking about our existence when all human beings had the capacity for was finding food, finding shelter,
And there-
reproducing.
And there was no
Not dying from-
sense of thought or self or concept
Yeah.
or anything like that. So there was no such thing as anxiety or mental illness or anything like that.
Well, it's not what we would have today. It would be some level of it, right? Because you have to have some anxiety when you're in a forest surrounded by
Well,
vicious predators.
Anxiety as a reflex, maybe that's basically autonomous.
Well, I'm
But
thinking
but
of
I'm
like
talking
I'm thinking
about
of like stored.
But I'm talking
thoughts.
about why people nowadays are so depressed and
Oh, they have too much.
antidepressants
too much
are
time.
being prescribed like it's fucking candy.
Yeah.
Like
well, that's a whole nother issue that I'd love to go into.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's kind of like this. Say you've lived to the age of 60, whatever the retirement age is.
Yeah.
I think it's 66 or 65.
60
It differs,
65
it's different
I think.
for men and women. It's like 65 for women, 67 for men, whatever.
I believe you can start to collect Social Security and you get Medicare at about 65, 66. So let's just say 65.
Whatever it is. Okay, so say you retire, right? You've been working your entire life, and then you just stop.
Yeah.
Okay, now you have 8 hours, at least 8 hours a day, where there's just nothing to do. So you have two options. One, you just sit around the house, just do nothing.
Yeah.
And when I say do nothing, I don't. Obviously you can watch a movie, read a book,
Mhm.
but do nothing that really works out your brain. And it's kind of like working out a muscle. You just
Yeah.
kind of atrophy,
Exactly.
and that's
Use it or lose it. That's
you
the
use it
thing.
or lose it, basically. Yeah, and I mean, the studies on this are pretty clear. I wish I had them handy, but those people who keep working until they're dead, there's a reason they only ever die at like age 80 or above.
Mhm.
Something like barring any kind of cancer or terrible disease.
Because they're-
dying of old age is put off for a very long time
Because they're
while you have
stopping-
that kind of purpose.
Or no, because they're slowing the natural and eternal decay of all things that is the universe, because that's all it is. Everything is constantly in a state of decay.
Yeah, and it's only people that put some kind of order onto it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the whole idea with Eastern philosophy and Buddhism and all this stuff is everything is in constant decay. So really, there is no thing you can grab onto. There is no thing that you can hold on to and keep safe. And this is basically why there's no reason for the self, and it's just an illusion of your brain, and like nothing is really necessary. Like the only thing you need to do is live, and because think about it. Life until humans, it was just you live, or something lives,
You're born, you might maybe reproduce,
And then die.
then you die.
and for
Nothing you do
literally
matters.
for what millions of years that was going on.
Well, I mean,
Multiple
are you
millions
going,
of
are you going
years?
from the age
Multiple
of the,
millions
Are you
of
going
years?
from the age of the universe or when life
Earth,
started?
like Earth, in
Earth, few billion years actually. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
Few. What is it? 4.3 is the age of the Earth.
But like, when did like the
About-
first like
about-
single-celled organisms come about and all that shit? Like,
about half that, 2 billion. Years?
okay, yeah. So let's just say like 2 billion years then. So for 2 billion years, life was born, reproduce,
Even
die.
further, 3.5 billion years, and Earth is 4.54 billion years old. So
Mm-hmm.
3.5 billion years of what anyone would reasonably call life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now that is literally just the cycle of life. It's the yin and the yang. It's just over and over. It's the never-ending conveyor belt of shit. It's just around and around and around and around and
Yeah.
around and again. But the only difference is every time you go around this track,
Get a little bit higher.
something's a little different.
Yeah.
Every single
This is
time.
evolution. Yeah.
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 And yeah.
And eventually you get to the crazy mutated extreme of people,
of
human beings.
Yeah, of consciously self-aware human beings. And yeah, it's just crazy because if yeah, like the only reason we have concepts of objective and subjective reality or concepts of anything is because our brains are at a point where we can think about thinking, basically. And
Yeah.
once you can think about thinking, you're fucked.
Not most people. A lot of people.
Once you can think about thinking, you're fucked, because as soon as you can wait. Actually,
It's not really.
as soon as you can
I mean,
even do the action of thinking.
I'm just trying to think. It's like because like a schizophrenic person doesn't. I don't know if this is correct, but the reason they are the way they are is because of some chemical imbalance in the brain. So it's not necessarily that of their own volition they start thinking about. I mean, this sometimes happens
Yeah.
with. Actually, probably a lot of people who are depressed, right?
It's an imbalance.
They
yeah.
keep thinking themselves back into depression.
But see,
But I'm talking about the people
Yeah.
who have like some serious chemical imbalance. It's not necessarily that it's of their own volition that
Yeah.
they arrive at being severely mentally ill. It's that they have the machinery
yeah.
to be doing something a lot more, I guess you could say, productive. But then the wrong ingredients get put in
Yeah.
at the beginning, and it's like
Yeah.
you just throw a wrench into the fine-tuned machinery
because
of the human brain.
there's a significant correlation with like genetics, and especially something like schizophrenia for
Yeah.
sure. That's
Yeah.
that's like huge.
Yeah.
But yeah, like but see, and then this is another concept you get, is that nothing is out of place in the universe. There's not a single grain of sand, there's not a single anything that's out of place or where it shouldn't be, because that is
Well, there's no other place that it could be.
because
See what I mean?
yes.
Yeah.
Because
But-
nothing is everything is going exactly how it should. No matter how great something is, no matter how horrific something is that happens, everything is as it should be, because that's the
Well-
never-ending cycle.
Well, as it should be is a rather subjective interpretation. I mean, we can argue all day about what should be.
Yeah. Well, by
But
should
just-
be
you
should
just
be.
say
I'm just-
what you're saying is what is.
yes, and it's
Right? There's no other way that it could be.
yes.
But that doesn't. But should is a different idea. Should is saying, by my
Well,
by
see,
my interpretation of the matter, this what has occurred is wrong, and here's what I think should be. I'm trying not to use the word should, but here's what I think must be the case
yeah,
to conform to my ideals or bias or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the universe, or we have no. I don't know. I forget where I was going with that.
but yeah. So this is why I say nothing objectively exists, because if we were, let's just rewind to a million years ago, nothing exists, because nobody thinks. There was nothing to think about. Does something exist or not in any fashion? So
Yeah, I mean, there's just no real sense of what we now call thought.
yeah. Therefore,
Not
there's
even, not even some kind of threshold.
meaning there's
bare minimum.
meaning there's no conscious experience until human beings come around.
It's just, you could almost say clockwork, but
Exactly. So
yeah.
it's just the universe doing its thing, and that's also related to Eastern philosophy and everything. It's
Which isn't to impugn motive on the universe, right? Like they're not saying that
There's
the
no
universe
motive
has
of the-
some kind of mind of
But
its
see,
own.
this is where the saying "everything happens for a reason" really does come into play, because everything does happen for a reason.
Well,
in a
But reason
in a certain
implies
sense.
reason implies motive, right? Reason implies some in that sense.
well,
Like,
see, look,
when
so
this
this is what I mean by that.
Everything happens for a reason. That's
Yeah.
like saying, I started going to the gym every week.
Mhm.
Every day of every week, I went to the gym, and eventually I made it to the Olympics in
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
Right? That's the reason I decided to do that. I ended up where I was.
Yeah.
Whatever. But a rock falling down a mountain in the middle of nowhere has no reason. There's no motive behind it. It's just something that happens.
Well, see, there was no motive behind, or like really choice in what that person who got to the Olympics did either, because they were destined to do that before it even happened.
That kind of, nah, I don't think so. What, fatalistic? That
No,
no matter
no,
what
no.
you do, you're eventually gonna get there.
No.
No, what you have to.
No matter-
like you're. I mean, it's hard to not call that fatalism.
It's okay. It's basically like a river flows, a rock falls, is the same thing as human beings doing whatever they do. There's no inherent difference. Everything is from the universe. It is not extraterrestrial. It is not like outside of the scope of the universe. The universe has completely planned for.
Well, hold on. But
Human beings.
But a rock can't decide not to fall. A river can't. There's no decision in the matter. I can decide what I do. I'm deciding to speak right now. And maybe you
There's
say
another argument for
maybe
that,
you
though.
say that I'm just a piece of the universe, and what's happening now was predestined to happen, and that the conclusion, it's a foregone conclusion what'll happen later. But I'd
It's-
like to see the evidence. I'd like to see the I'd like to see the clockmaker work.
I would say it's not so
all
much predestined as everything does what it wants. In a certain sense, right?
Well, again,
This is the
a
idea.
rock does not want. There's nothing that a rock
Just
wants.
just apply the concept of want to a rock, even though it
All right,
doesn't really make sense.
For the sake of
Yeah.
argument, sure.
So like
yeah.
everything does what it wants, everything does what it's supposed to, everything does what it does, right? And that's
everything does what it does.
and by supposed to, that's what I mean. I'm saying it does, and that's what it's supposed to do. Because the whole idea of life is to live. That is literally it. And it's just this cycle. It's just a cycle of this, of just like wavelengths. It's just up, down, up, down, up, down. And then it goes up a lot, and then it can go down a lot, and then it can go, and then it can like stabilize for a bit. And then, but really, it's just a never-ending cycle. And really, we don't have, nobody has control over it because...
Oh, well, I mean, I'll agree on that.
Yeah.
No one has control over the universe.
See,
But I have control over my actions. You have control over yours. To a certain degree. There's some disagreement about how, to what extent you are influenced by, your actions are influenced by your genes or
So-
chemical imbalances.
So the whole
Something, stuff like that.
argument
But
from...
there's a point at which, you're responsible, right?
So,
I'm deciding
yeah.
not to go rob a bank right now, etc.
I don't know a lot about this, but there is an argument from in Eastern and Buddhist perspective that there is no such thing as choice. That choice is just another illusion because you always do what you do, meaning what you want, what you're supposed to do.
I mean, there's no other universe that you can be in which you make a different decision. I mean, you can imagine one. You can imagine a multiverse in which you... I mean, this is kind of the uniquely human...
But see,
this is
let's
kind of the
say-
uniquely human
but
thing
see-
that you can do that. But what happens... You're basically just saying they're basically just saying what happens, happens. What has happened, what will happen.
Yes, and that's...
But that doesn't mean there's no choice in the matter right now for me to...
Well, see, there's a choice.
For me to have any impact on it.
There's a choice in
on
one
what
sense
will.
clearly because, see, okay, let's say the invention of agriculture or the city state, right? So no animal has that, right? Except for humans, right? Let's just
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So why do we have that? And did we really choose to do that, or we evolved to a point and the universe essentially molded us so that we could do that, and it perfectly planned for that because nothing is unnatural in a way. So
Sure.
everything is natural because everything comes from the universe. Nothing is unnatural. to say something is unnatural is just absurd. Like it just makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, what about supernatural?
What do you mean by supernatural?
Like I don't know, like Zeus throwing a lightning bolt down into the earth.
That's precisely natural. Do you want to know why? Because without humans created that idea of Zeus and gods and this and this and that. Whether it's true or not, that's a whole other story. But humans have that, and that came along through the process of evolution and just life and the universe molding the human race. Like,
Well, I mean, I mean, going back to like how city states and farming got. I mean, it's kind of a bit of both. Nature initially gave us the capacity to be able to do that, and
the
there-
universe perfectly planned for that. That was
Well,
not
okay,
unnatural.
again,
that was not an unnatural
again,
event.
impugning motive to the universe makes no sense to me.
Not
Like it just so happens to be the case.
not motive. It's not the right word. It's just
Well, you said the universe plans for it.
yeah. But like I'm just kind of that's the word I'm using because there's no word for it.
Well, happenstance. Random chance. I know random's a kind of but chance. You know,
there's-
just
That's a way to put it, but there's no real word you could use to describe it because you can't really put a term on it. There's no word in the English language. There's
poverty
no-
of words. Yeah.
But like, just, but yeah, like that's the whole thing. Like, everything happens and goes along, and everything is natural, and like even like something as horrific as whatever or as great as whatever, like that is all natural. That was allowed to happen. It was.
I think we're coming to a point where,
Because-
trying to square the use of natural with common usage,
Mhm.
it's really coming into conflict. I mean, your use of natural is really coming into conflict with common usage because I don't think. I mean,
Because they-
usually when people say natural, they mean
Something not human made.
something not human made.
But-
But humans are.
but
made,
humans
we're
are-
made by nature. We live in nature, etc.
Nothing is unnatural. Nothing's artificial. Everything is natural. That's a fact.
But artificial means made. Human interference. Right? We kind of differentiate ourselves from the natural world.
Yeah. We only do that to make things back to the practical thing. Like, we just do this to simplify things, make it easier to understand practical uses.
Sure, but we differentiate ourselves from those things that don't have the capacity to think about thinking. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like we said before, other things besides humans, do not have the capacity to think about thinking in the way that we do. I mean, there's apes and monkeys can kind of do this, right? You can teach an orangutan sign
language, yeah.
Sign language you can, but you can.
But they're not
you
thinking,
Can teach
they're
a dog
just-
to fetch your paper, etc.
It's classical conditioning. It's
To a certain extent.
It's an autonomous kind of give and take. It's,
Yeah, but I wonder about that because, I mean, training a dog to fetch the paper is one thing, but teaching a language to like sign language is a language in which they're coming up with responses that have not been conditioned, right? They're creating new messages to a certain
the thing with
extent.
that, I think you're referring to Coco the gorilla.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
So the whole thing with that is, if you look into it, that gorilla, like, basically what it did is just copy what
So it's just imitation, purely no invention. It's just pure imitation.
there was nothing like humans have art because we like express ourselves. We just do it, right?
Sure.
They didn't get that from Coco the gorilla.
Mm.
What the gorilla did was it was able to respond either in basically what it did was it responded in the same or almost the same way that it was talked to, quote unquote, with like the sign language. There's also this chimp. I don't know if you ever seen this where they have a screen, like a computer screen with like 300 images on it.
You're too far from the mic, I think.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I can barely.
There's like a computer screen with like a bunch of images on it, right? and
Oh, it hits these buttons.
oh, no. So
Or
like
it touches the screen.
yeah,
and
yeah, So it hits the screen, and the lady will say, let's say the chimp's name is Lucy, even though it's not. Hey Lucy, find me the hamburger, and it will go boop, and it will click the picture of the hamburger.
Yeah.
But it only knows that
It's
because
classical conditioning,
yeah.
because every time it gets it right, they'll feed it. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how humans work. Up
Yes.
until a certain point.
Yes,
Imitation is
humans.
what is it? Imitation is the first step in education or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I don't know.
Exactly,
I
yeah.
forget exactly how it
Um,
goes.
And then we go a step beyond. But there's something you said before. You said humans are mutants, but the thing
Yeah.
is, humans are completely natural. It's there's
Well,
nothing out of place.
All mutants mean is that something that has changed. Right?
Well,
like
everything
a mutation.
then everything is mutant because everything is in a constant state of change and decay.
I could bring in some Latin. That'd be fun. No, I'm being serious because I remember reading this passage. Who's it by? Is it Ovid? Something like that. That basically, I mean, you could have read it in English and thought it would have come from China, or I don't know, where's the Dalai Lama from? Tibet or India or something like that.
Yeah.
Right, because the whole point of the passage is everything changes, nothing is the same. This everything flows.
You're not the same person you
everything-
were
everything-
5 seconds ago.
Everything flows like
Yeah.
a river, and
Exactly.
you're all gonna die. Something like that.
Yeah.
Pretty good stuff. Anyways, sorry, completely got sidetracked by that. We're talking about people, evolution. Yeah, I mean, there really is no other species that has quite the capacity, or even arguably any capacity, for thinking about thinking
And
that I can think of.
And it seems very weird and unnatural, but in fact, the universe created us, right? It allowed for this.
Well, it kind of seems like the definition. I mean, just like you can have something that proves too much. It seems like it defines way too much, and that kind of goes back to the earlier point of having an axiom which just proves having an axiom or a theorem or something like that just proves everything.
Yep.
It stinks
Now,
when you hear something like that.
now to relate this back to the original question, right?
Oh my word!
Ready?
How long's it been now?
So we're coming
well
full
over
circle here.
Full circle. Yep.
Okay. So everything is because something else isn't, right? And there is no good without the bad. There is no rose without the thorn. There is no yin without the yang. There is no
Yeah, you can't really define something without defining
Something
it's kinda
else.
It's kind of like Cat in the Hat, right? You're searching through the house for everything, and you're marking off everything everywhere where this one object is not. So it's just process of elimination, and eventually you come upon where it is.
Yep.
But
So
we've
therefore, therefore,
expedited that process quite a bit.
therefore, I think we can mostly agree on that everything is subjective, and you really, in the true definition of objectivity, there is no objective reality.
Well, yeah. I mean, in the highly academic way of defining
Yeah.
things, sure. You're really just coming down to disagreements in practicality
Yeah.
to a certain extent. Like,
Because the reason
how,
why nothing,
how much subjectivity am I
Yeah.
putting into my ideas?
the reason why
the
nothing
things I'm trying to prove.
the reason why nothing can be independent is precisely because there is no good without evil. Like, we don't know what good
There's
is.
nothing that can be observed without an observer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't know what something is unless you can identify something else as well that's not like it,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So like,
I mean, this is just categorization, whatever. Dividing things into categories.
yeah, and this actually argument comes up a lot when you listen to a lot of debates between like, say, Christians and atheists and what have you, and this is where usually usually the Christians are spot on with this one, and the atheists are usually very wrong on this one,
What do you mean?
which is like basically like the problem of evil, right? Right. I'm sure you've heard of this argument.
Yeah, the argument that you don't know what evil is if God doesn't tell you what evil is.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So usually atheists will say,
Or that even if you know what evil is, it's because God imbued you with the sense
of good as well.
of good, of what is good and what is evil, and you know.
So usually atheists will be like, no, that's bullshit because you can have good without evil, and then the Christian will be like, no, you can't.
Well, no,
Usually.
I'd have to. I can't really. I don't think so. I don't really think that's the argument. I think the argument is more that you don't need supernatural, in the common sense, a supernatural being to tell you what is good and what is evil.
Just replace God.
It's something that people have figured out either through experience or through.
So then just
some
replace
kind of-
God
some
with
kind of
universe.
some kind of collective intelligence.
Just replace God with universe. It's literally all the same thing anyway.
It's not. People.
It is.
Because religious people will define God as something that exists outside of the universe, right? God is not a material being. The universe, in the common sense, is.
Yeah, but like you don't have one without the other, and they're so intertwined that you cannot separate them.
Right, but okay, but take all right. So take this. Think about this. What exists and what does not exist. You can't define what exists unless you define what doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So what if you're just putting God into that camp of what doesn't exist, and you're putting what you can observe, what can be proven scientifically, etc., into the camp of what does exist? I mean, what's wrong with that?
Nothing is, but there's also nothing wrong with doing it a different way as well.
But see, that comes back to my what I said earlier about basically taking the whole pie as your axiom, rather than taking a small number of axioms and proving the rest of it from those. Making as little assumptions as possible.
I would argue that clearly one of them is much more practical, but practicality isn't everything.
But it kind of is when you get down to it, because
No.
you're already saying.
Okay, so wait.
You're already saying
Wait.
that there's nothing that exists objectively. So
Yeah.
the only thing left is to get to come to a closest approximation of that, which is if objectivity is the opposite of subjectivity, then in order to maximize objectivity, you need to minimize subjectivity,
Yeah.
i.e., minimize the number of axioms from which you prove everything else, which is more or less what science tries to do, right?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Which is the opposite kind of what religion does, which is kind of why the two are often at odds.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's no definitive right way to go about it. There's no definitive wrong way to go about it, because think about it like this. Every good thing has a bad part of it. Every bad thing has a good part of it.
Well, every good thing, for every good thing there exists
Bad things that come from it.
bad opposite.
Like,
Or what do you mean bad things that come from
like for instance, one of them would be the human brain. We have computers.
Oh, that's what you mean.
We
Okay,
have computers,
right.
but we also have mental illness and just all this other kind of
Video
shit.
game addiction,
Yeah.
social media addiction,
Any kind of
etc.
addiction you name, yeah.
Sure.
So that's that. And then from every bad thing, we
There's some
can
kind of-
obtain something good from it.
Yeah, something that I just when you just said that there's something good you can obtain. Well, you can argue that something good comes from something bad.
Mm-hmm.
You often hear, I don't know, what is it? If Genghis Khan never massacred millions and millions of people, and the Mongols never massacred I keep saying billions, but millions and millions of people in their conquest, you'd never get this. You never get this kind of Pax Mongolia, right? This huge swath of the Asiatic continent that was at peace for several well, centuries, peace in big quotation marks. And the same thing with Romans, right? If the Romans never conquered the Mediterranean, you'd never have Pax Romana. If England never conquered the world in a certain,
Yeah.
that you'd never have peace, or they'd be living in the Stone Age, etc. That leads to some pretty dangerous places. It
Yeah,
leads to some pretty dangerous places. You
have like a country like ours, basically nowadays.
Hey, it is President's Day. I just realized.
All right, so
All right, well, I think we're
happy-
departing full course.
happy
Do we just
President's Day.
Do we just want to make a clean break between? I don't think we're discussing philosophy anymore. I
Yeah,
think
no.
This is more getting into history and or politics.
Very quickly. So, using the like this country for example, right?
Yeah.
What does this country do? Sometimes it's basically the policeman of the world, basically. And so we're involving ourselves
Right.
in everybody's business around the world. Now, in a way that you can see how that's pretty good, right? Because now we can make sure that there's, no things that like the Holocaust can happen because we have things like the UN and all this kind of shit that goes on, peace.
But there's a cost.
But the cost is
There's a cost. I mean, literally, financially speaking, but also the number of people who or the
Hate us.
the number of people who end up hating you for
Islamic terrorism.
sticking your nose in
Exactly.
in places where they think you shouldn't be.
Precisely.
Why is America in Afghanistan? Why
Uh-huh.
why were we in Vietnam, etc.
So with
things like
everything
that.
that has a good, there's a bad. With everything that has a bad, there's a good, basically.
Sure. Yeah. Actions have consequences. You reap what you sow.
and-
all these
And
these
so
adages.
you never know if something is a blessing or a curse, really. And really, you can then argue nothing is a blessing or like a curse.
It's some mixture of the two, and it's just depending. It depends.
It depends on your perspective,
it
too.
depends how crazy you are.
Yeah.
And what you end up
depends
defining.
on your perspective,
What you
for
end
sure.
up defining as a blessing or a curse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyways, happy President's Day, everybody.
Happy President's Day.
Oh man, I think we got like 9-10 minutes left.
Yeah, so maybe we should like have something to have like a clip or something to like play us out or whatever.
No, we can talk for a little bit more.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think we've kind of exhausted. I
think
mean,
we've
we
pretty-
really did come full circle.
Yeah.
In the end there. I don't know. Who's your favorite president, Vinny?
Let's see. My favorite president was probably Andrew Johnson was my favorite president. You want to know why?
Wait. Hold on. Hold the phone. Okay. Go on. I remember who he is. Yeah.
So I believe Andrew Johnson is one of the 3 presidents to ever be impeached.
Correct.
There was Nixon.
Clinton.
Well, no. Nixon did not get impeached
Well-
because he resigned. He
what?
he
I forget.
He might have been impeached by the House
in
maybe or
abs-
something,
in
but,
absentia or
but not the
something.
Senate. Yeah.
Something like that. It never went through.
Yeah,
all the
so
way. Yeah.
there was Nixon, Clinton, and Andrew Johnson, and nobody really knows about Andrew Johnson, but he was arguably the worst president ever. Like if you look into his presidency, he was arguably the worst president. He was
I could think of someone worse,
really.
but it's a running
So-
running gun battle.
So
Yeah, it's a toss up.
I encourage people to look into Andrew Johnson and see what kind of things he said. He was profoundly racist, profoundly.
Yeah, he was. If I remember correctly, he was. Back when he was Lincoln's vice president. This was back when the way it worked in federal politics was that you'd have one person, whoever won the general. I guess they didn't really count the general election. They only counted the electoral college. Whoever won the electoral college, he was president. Whoever came in second was his vice president. So you'd always have the vice president. You basically have an internal rivalry in the presidency. So the vice president always usually always had the opposite politics from the president. We can make some arguments about why that's good or bad based on checks and balances, but the bottom line is that when Lincoln was assassinated, you had this guy who was, I forget if he was pro-slavery. Was he pro-slavery? I'd imagine
Lincoln?
he was. No, not Lincoln. Johnson.
Oh yeah, for sure. He was.
Okay, yeah,
He was.
right.
He was a Southern Democrat
That's right.
who was
Somehow he was
vehemently for slavery.
Well, I'm trying to think of why he would have been in the administration then, because they basically, I mean, there were no diplomatic relations between the southern states and the North and the Confederacy and the Union.
Mhm.
But what, in any case, he was not a good guy. Not
You
a
know,
good guy.
Not the best person you want to have your president.
Yeah.
But the reason why I say he's my favorite is because we had such a terrible president like him, we can see that we have some good presidents like who are some traditionally considered like the best presidents.
Sure,
Reagan, Lincoln.
Lincoln, Washington,
Oh yeah. Jefferson.
yeah. General consensus.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
thanks to someone like Johnson, we have these great presidents like the ones we just said. So life lesson, here we go. Be thankful for your enemies and be thankful for the bad, because without it we don't have the good and we don't have the friends.
Do you know what happened to him?
Who?
Andrew Johnson. He was actually, I don't think he was impeached.
He was tried though.
He was tried.
Yeah.
What ended up happening was, I forget if it was a senator or a congressman, but he was saved by one vote.
Oh really?
One
oh, that's right.
single vote.
That's right. I remember that.
It was absolutely. I mean, I never read any. I just remember reading this back in probably high school history class. Yeah. So your vote matters. Happy President's Day.
Happy President's Day.
We still got time. Do we want to? Who's my favorite president? That's a good question. Oh, the person I was going to say who was worse than Andrew Johnson, because Johnson never. It's probably not entirely true, but to the best of my knowledge, he never really did anything, right?
Yeah.
Because he was a lame duck president. Because at that time, the Reconstruction hadn't happened yet. Right, immediately after
Yeah.
Lincoln was assassinated, obviously, and all the House and the Senate were Republicans, right? There were no Southern Democrats or Whigs, if they still existed. There was basically no political opposition at the time.
Oh, this lends itself to a perfect.
So he didn't really do anything.
Yeah.
The person who did do something
Oh.
very bad, many times, and he was kind of a psychopath, Andrew Jackson.
Oh, really? Yes.
Andrew Jackson.
By the way, the
Yeah.
first president to have an assassination attempt
Against him.
on a sitting president. Yes.
He was probably also the first president to publicly threaten the life of a congressman or senator. All right, so he's a batshit insane.
Also, he was barely schooled and he could barely read and write, I believe.
Yeah, but his military record is insane.
Yeah.
That's another matter. But the thing I'm thinking about is that in let's see, when was he? Sometime in the 1820s, there was this senator or congressman, I forget which, named John C. Calhoun from South Carolina.
I know that name. I've heard that many times in my history
You're
class.
gonna know
Yeah.
why. All right. So John C. Calhoun, representative of some sort from South Carolina, said one day, "Hey, guess what, federal government? We're not going to pay any new taxes. You know that bill you just passed? Yeah, no, not going to happen." So Andrew Jackson sends a treasure fleet with guards, warships, a treasure.
So the
fleet-
U.S. Army.
the U.S.
Or-
the Navy into
Navy.
Charleston, South Carolina, and basically and says, okay, taxes now, or we're fine, or we're gonna take it by more force than we already have with us. But Andrew, I think, it may not have actually happened. I think he walked through the city, marched through the city saying, "Find me John C. Calhoun. I'm going to string him up by the nearest tree." Something like that. Yeah,
Oh
dude,
my
the
God.
1800s. I mean, we think we have it bad now.
Yeah.
At least no one's beating the shit out of each other at least sitting congressmen and senators aren't beating the shit out of each other in the House of Representatives or the Senate.
Well,
at least that's not happening.
That's in this country.
Oh yeah.
If you look at other countries, I watched like it was like
Eastern Europe is
yes,
notorious.
Okay,
Yeah.
all of these guys in the fucking parliaments, if you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
All of them are fucking like black belts in like Russian fucking martial arts.
Yeah, they're all
And then-
like disciples of
yeah,
Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, and like they literally start beating the shit out of each other on like the Senate floor.
Yeah.
Like
It's insane. Oh, but the reason why I say Andrew Jackson's worse,
yeah.
Trail of Tears.
Oh yeah.
Gotta-
yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, no, you know, yeah,
I can't really
That's
think
true.
of anything, any other form of unnecessary human suffering
yeah.
that any president has ever initiated greater
Then
greater than
probably
that. I'm trying to. I mean, you can make the argument that, you know, dropping the bomb on Japan was obviously
You could, yeah.
Yeah, but that was wartime, and there's arguments why. But whatever, you know, we weren't at war with the people,
Yeah, no.
the Native Americans, who were forcibly moved.
How many people died from that?
I wouldn't want to. Well, I would. I forget. It's a lot.
Wow.
It's
yeah,
a lot.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, those are two horrible presidents. Funny enough, they're both named Andrew, so Andrews never vote for
That's true.
never vote for an Andrew as president.
Yeah. Never vote for an Andrew as president.
Yeah.
Oh man, is there anything else we want to say about President's Day? I don't know. Who's it for? It's for Washington. They're like within a few.
Washington, Jefferson,
and Lincoln?
Maybe, yeah.
It's like it's not even that they share the same birthday.
Did you know that there used to be?
They split it.
They split
and
it,
then they
yes,
combined it.
yeah.
Well, because they have different birthdays.
Yeah.
But then they just decided, okay, you know, having two federal holidays.
No.
2
It's
days
too much. It's too much.
2 or 3 days apart. Come on.
It's too much.
Too much time off. All right. I think we're gonna wrap it up there.
All right, yeah.
I think that's it.
All right.
I don't know. Is there any closing message we want to say? If you're listening in right now and not listening to this later, after we've edited it heavily, hopefully to edit out all the downtime and stutters and all that stuff. If you're listening live and you'd like to continue to do so, we are on again this time every week for the rest of rest of this semester, so until May 10th, roughly.
Yeah.
May 10th, 1 to 3, on Ursinus's own student radio, WVOU. And we also have a music show.
From 3 to 4?
No, we
so-
moved it. Yeah, I got it moved.
4
4 to 5 Wednesday.
4 to 5 on Wednesdays.
4 to 5 Wednesdays for music. 1 to 3 Mondays for bullshit and talk and whatever the hell else we want to, talk about. Anyways, that's it for us. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day.